Hey guys, it's Wavejump here, and welcome back to another video. And today we are back on our command block
Slimy
world, and we are going to go ahead and be covering difficulty, game rule, and trigger. And these commands are very simple. And yeah, oops, I need to update my sub count because we're actually at 191 subscribers, which is just crazy. So yeah, thanks a lot for that. So essentially, if you're wondering why the heck I just did that quick little pause there, it's because we have I'm working on later this episode, this is going to be really cool, is we're going to actually be going onto my server in creative mode and going into covering the game rule command, but via the assistance of that. Alright, so the way the difficulty command works, which is our first command of today, is the difficulty just lets you set the difficulty. So what difficulty means, if you don't know, is it essentially has to do with how difficult the game is. So for example, if I summon a zombie, you'll notice we have the zombie there, but the difficulty peaceful doesn't let zombies spawn. So now you'll notice I could summon a zombie, but it disappears right away because they're not allowed. If I change it to easy though, for example, it'll work. And basically there are different settings for each one. You could also do difficulty 0, 1, 2, 3. But yeah, I'm going to keep my difficulty at 1, because that's a pretty helpful command to be able to know if you're running a server. And yeah. So the next thing we're going to cover is, if we go ahead here and take a look, we have game rule and trigger, but we're going to cover trigger first. So the way trigger works is basically you create a new objective. So I'm going to go scoreboard objectives, add triggered, and trigger. So now you notice we have this new objective called triggered, and if I go now, I could go scoreboard players enable, and then the player's name, and then triggered. So what that means is, say if that player does not have permissions, if they're de-opt, if they don't have cheats on, they'll still be able to use the trigger. So the way triggers are usable is I could go trigger set trigger triggered set 1. And you'll notice now triggered set with set 1, and that worked now. So the way we could do this now, we could have command block repeating that says I don't think we could do that. How are we going to do this? So essentially, actually, I have a great example here. So essentially, you kind of can get the point, but if I move on quickly here to Party Hat Herobrine's Realm, we have a great example of this, and that is to do with a book and depositing experience. So if we go ahead here and log on, this is going to take a quick minute here, you'll notice that we have, and oh goodness, my inventory's full, we have this thing called an experience book. And first off, if I click the deposit 1 experience, it'll say you have added 1 experience to your bank, and you'll notice here, oops, apparently I have jump boost. You'll notice here that on the right, I'm adding experience into my bank, right? But this is actually working using a trigger. So you'll notice I go trigger Wavejump games, or trigger, yeah, let's withdraw something. So if I set withdraw to 1, you'll notice it detected that and set my withdraw to 1, or I could set deposit, set 1, and deposit. So the way, and the way this works is pretty simple. So the deposit 1, it tests for if you have a score of 1. So when you set a trigger, it actually just sets your score. Then it's going to basically check if you have at least 1 level, it'll remove 1 of your levels, and then because of that, it'll add you 1 to your experience bank score. It'll say you've added X experience to your bank. It'll play a sound, and it'll set your deposit score back to 0 so it doesn't spam it. Alright, so now I think we're ready to move on to the server to cover game rule. So yeah guys, I'll be there in just a second. Alright guys, we are back, and we are here with Slimy Pickle Sucker, or DC for Claw. Deathclaw. And we're going to be going over /game rule. So /game rule is a very simple command, but it has so many uses. Yeah, those are some cool wings. So you notice if I respawn here, oh, that's a problem. Let me, so, okay, I'm gonna actually head back there, MW move in games, or actually I could just TP. So, oh yeah, good point, I should set my spawn here. So if I go spawn point here, and I kill myself, you'll notice, and we're having a little bit of server lag, no, apparently that's not going to work because we're on a server. Okay, never mind then. Oh minute, I'm gonna go lag unload chunks. There we go. 512 chunks have been unloaded. That's probably the cause of the lag. Anyway, so game rules, we're gonna go over the all of them and what they do, and it's a very important command to know, but they're very simple. Alright, so the first one is command block output, and this tells you if command blocks will send feedback into chat. So if I set that to true, and give myself a command block here, give Wavejump Games command block, if I don't lag the heck out here, because obviously the server's lag is not great right now. Repeat always active, and we'll say hi. So you'll notice here, oops, that's not what I wanted. TP at TP Wavejump Games, there. So you notice now it says in chat, teleport Wavejump Games, and this may only show up for ops, I can't remember. But yeah, it's basically will spam your chat with teleported player to whatever. Yeah, you can't see it probably, unfortunately. But anyways, yeah, if we move on to other game rules, we have the game rule disable later movement check. This has to do with movement and servers. And yeah, so we're going to now go to do daylight cycle, which is one you're probably familiar with. So if I set that to false, essentially the way this is going to work is if I say set it to night, it will never be day again. The sun will just be stationary there, and it won't move. So we're gonna keep that just for now. Actually, no, we're gonna set back to true, and you will notice that the sun all of a sudden starts moving again. So we also have do entity drops. This has to do with whether or not players or things in general will drop items. So if I were to go ahead here and say summon a zombie times multiple, if I were to summon a zombie, yeah, you'll notice here, since I set drops to true, the zombie, oh gosh, this lag is unbearable. Anyways, yeah, the zombies will go ahead and drop items, but if I set this to false, do entity drops false, you'll notice here that if I hit the zombie, oops, that's not what I wanted. You know why, it's probably because there we go, now you notice it dropped nothing. That's how it's supposed to work. Alright, here we go. So the next game rule we're going to go over is do fire tick. And do fire tick has to do with whether or not fire will spread. So if I set that to true, you'll notice here we're gonna grab a ton of wood and some lava, and you'll see exactly what I mean. Your boat has been hijacked by the zombie. But you know, if I put lava here, it's going to of course start burning the wood. And yeah, let me actually set it to daytime because then we'll have no more mob issues. You'll notice here in just a minute anyways, it would start catching on fire. Take my word for it, it will start catching on fire because that's how fire tick works. But if I set that to false, then this will never burn, and it will just kind of be lava forever. So that's how that works. Very, very simple, very helpful, because you don't always want your entire thing to burn down. Yep. So, sorry about your boat. I'll give you your boat back, except for in the form of a dark oak boat, because it's now burned. Where are you? STP, Slimy, Pikul, Suker. There we go. Alright, right there. There's your new boat. So, anyways, yeah, again, game rules. We have the do mob loot, so if you have that set to true, mobs will drop items, and otherwise they won't. Let me heal you then. Heal. There's also game rule, do mob spawning. So this, if you set it to false, mobs can never spawn, but we're not going to do that. There's game rules do tile drops, which has to do with whether or not blocks will actually drop. So you'll notice now that's set to false, if I break this dirt, it's never going to drop. But if I set it to true, this dirt will now drop as an actual block, and ow, that was not helpful. Okay. Did it die again? Did your boat die? It was a crepper. Okay, in that case, I'll get you your boat again. There you go. You don't have your boat back. Okay, so the next command is the keep inventory command. I have trouble with words today. So the keep inventory command is a super helpful command that you will probably be using daily, or well, that you'll probably be wanting to use every time you set up a world. I'm not sure why I said daily, but essentially what this does is it will make it so that you will either drop or not drop your items. So if I clear my inventory and just make myself full in case it's sapling, game mode, survival, and do game rule, keep inventory false, and I die, then you'll know I got killed by myself at the same time that I was killed by, oh jeez, yep, you'll notice I got died, and I lost my items, so now there's a stack of saplings that has been given. So now if I set to true, when you die, you'll keep your items. If we move on here to next commands, after inventory you have log admin commands. So this has to do with whether or not commands will show up in the console. So essentially, if I were to say do game mode C in the console, it'll show up as me running game mode C, but I could hide that, I believe, if I remember correctly. So that's a bit of a helpful thing if you don't want console spam. I personally don't care about it, so I don't mess with it. Mob griefing is another super helpful command. Basically, it has to do with whether or not creepers will blow up blocks. So, as we know here, we've had creepers here before, they haven't blown up blocks, and that's because mob griefing was set to false, meaning mobs cannot grief. Natural regeneration is pretty simple. It basically has to do with whether or not you can regenerate health normally. Yeah, so random tick speed has to do with basically how fast the world moves. So if I go ahead here, and this may have issues due to server lag, and I or say plant some crops. So let's grab a water bucket and some seeds. So now you'll notice here, if I break this little area here and fill it all up with water, oops, and now I place down some seeds over here, they'll just grow at a normal rate. And you'll notice game rule random tick speed is by default set to 3. If I set that to, say, 2000, you'll notice everything will start moving in super speed. So that's a really fun command that you could use. One of my favorite commands ever, just because of how fun it is. And yeah, so moving on here, we also have the reduced debug info. I believe this is F3, you know, you could get info about it, but I personally like debug info, so I'm not going to hide it. There is send command feedback, which basically tells you which has to do with chat. So if I Gamerule send command feedback to false, and I do / game mode survival, you'll notice it didn't show any feedback in chat, but if I set it to true, and go to survival mode, you'll notice it says your game mode has been updated. So, moving on here, show death messages basically is whether or not it'll show you information about that you died in chat. Spawn radius is a very simple command. It basically has to do with whether or not you spawn the middle block. So say my spawn point was right here. Current by default the spawn radius is pretty far out, so you'll actually have a fair amount of distance that you're able to spawn in, right? But if you set that to say 0, you can only spawn on this block right here. So that's a very helpful command. Recording a command block tutorial. And lastly, we have spectators generate chunks, and this has to do with whether spectators can generate chunks or not. Pretty self-explanatory. So if I go into spectator mode, you'll notice here these chunks are generating as I'm moving. We can turn that off. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead here. And we're going to head back to the hub, and we're going to go ahead and unload that other world there, because we don't need that world anymore. So I'm going to go MW unload CMD. There we go. Oh, never mind. Alright, there we go. And now we're back to our normal lag thing. Hopefully that won't automatically load on start. Oh, actually, MW delete CMD. So anyways, now you understand how that works. It's very, very simple. It's super helpful to know. And I believe we've covered everything this episode. So guys, I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, go ahead and leave a like down below. And subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, guys. Of course, share this with your friends if they are looking for a command block tutorial, need some help. To join the server, it's apply.wavejump.us to apply. I accept pretty much literally everyone. And I do, server.wavejump.us is the IP. Again, thanks for watching. Bye!